They said I could attend the board meeting just to take notes. I had restructured their logistics, slashed 15% in costs, and rescued a failing audit. And yet, my father handed the CEO seat to my brother, who couldn't even spell EBITDA without Googling it. That day, I smiled, I picked up the pen, and I started writing my own company instead. 10 years later, I walked back into the very same boardroom, not as someone's daughter, not as a forgotten shareholder, but as the woman who now owns their largest supplier, controls their credit line, and is here to save the company that once threw her out. This is not a story of revenge. It's a story of how rejection built an empire. And today, I'm back, not to get even but to take over. They left me out, so I left for good. After that meeting, no one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. My brother Logan became the golden boy overnight, shiny new title, a press release full of buzzwords, and a corner office he didn't earn. My father told me, you should focus on internal events, HR stuff. Culture building. It suits you. Culture building. That's what they call it when they don't want you near the numbers. So I packed my things. No drama, no tears. I moved 3 cities away. Rented a warehouse no one wanted. And I started something called Nova Arc, a company with no investors, no family name, no fancy entrance. Just me, and a very small team of people who, like me, had once been told, "You're not the right fit." I didn't build Nova Arc to compete with Hargrove Logistics. I built it to prove that competence doesn't need permission. And while Logan was busy golfing with clients, he barely understood. I was working through the night, reverse engineering the very supply chain they took for granted. No shortcuts, no nepotism, just results. They built a name, I built a network. Nova Arc didn't explode overnight. We grew in silence, deliberately. First, we took on clients no one wanted, overdue invoices, small volume contracts, seasonal headaches. But we delivered. Then came the second phase. We offered back-end solutions for their vendors, freight tracking, predictive analytics, cold storage reroutes. Quietly, we became the engine behind other engines. Hargrove Logistics didn't even notice. By year 3, our software was managing shipments for 2 of their top 5 partners. By year 5, we acquired Halden Steelworks, Hargrove's largest raw material supplier. But we didn't do it under the Nova Arc name. We used a Nordic holding company. Clean, untraceable, strategic. Why? Because this wasn't about ego, it was about control. Control over what goes in, what goes out, and eventually, who stays in business. While Logan posed with ribbon-cutting scissors, I was busy becoming the shadow beneath their foundation. And the beauty of a shadow is this. It's already there, before they realize the light is gone. They thought I disappeared, I was just getting into position. Logan never saw it coming. The quarterly numbers started dipping. Then came the missed deadlines, the supplier delays, the unexplained overages. Hargrove Logistics was slipping, but they blamed the market, the economy, the employees, never themselves. Meanwhile, I sat 3 cities away, sipping green tea and reading their financial reports faster than their own CFO. Halden Steelworks, now ours, quietly raised prices, just a bit. The other 2 vendors, also ours. The cracks weren't accidental, they were strategic. Each time Logan signed a new contract, he didn't realize the terms were already mine. And then came the perfect moment. One of Hargrove's global partners, Cantera Freight, backed out of a $60 million deal. Overnight, 40% of their revenue forecast collapsed. The board panicked. Logan froze. And I booked a flight back to the city. The same boardroom they once asked me to just take notes in, I was now walking into. As the largest external shareholder, the owner of their entire supply chain, and the only person left who could save them from the fall they never saw coming. I wasn't invited. I didn't need to be. I had already arrived. The room that once silenced me now waited for me to speak. The receptionist looked confused when I walked in. I didn't blame her. It had been nearly a decade. I wore a dark gray suit. Clean, no logo, no name tag, only a slim folder in one hand and ownership in the other. I entered the boardroom. Logan was mid-sentence, nervously pitching a last-ditch restructure plan. His slide glitched. He smacked the remote, the board barely looked at him, and then they saw me. Logan's voice caught. Mia. My father leaned forward, confused. What is this? I pulled out my chair, the one I was never offered 10 years ago, and sat down. Calm, deliberate. Let's begin, I said. The lead counsel cleared his throat. As of this morning, Ms. Mia Clarke, via Nova Holdings, has acquired 49% of Halden Steelworks, Clarion Freight, and Nexus Ops. I added, and I've secured conditional voting rights from the last 2 minority investors. A pause. That puts me at 53% control of Hargrove's operating ecosystem. Silence, my father stood. You're bluffing. I opened the folder. Inside, purchase agreements. Contract red lines, payment schedules, all signed, all verified. I slid it down the table. You can check the signatures, or you can hear what comes next. Logan stammered, but this is a family business. I looked at him. Exactly. You treated it like family, I treated it like business. The head of finance whispered to the chair, she's telling the truth. I leaned forward, gentleman and father. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because you're out of time, out of leverage, and out of people who know what they're doing. Let's talk terms. No screaming, no threats, just signatures that changed everything. I stood, walked slowly to the digital screen at the front of the boardroom. One tap. A new chart lit up, project performance since my departure. Black small square completion rates, 34%. Black small square cost overruns, 51%. Black small square client churn, 27%. Another tap, internal proposal audit, side by side. Logan's top 3 flagship projects. All lifted, word for word, from proposals I'd written, before being told to stick to culture building. I looked at him, calm. I kept copies. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I turned back to the board. Here's what happens next. Black small square Logan is to step down as CEO immediately. Black small square Nova Arc will assume operational control of all logistics, manufacturing, and vendor negotiations. Black small square all executive decisions above $500K require dual sign-off, mine and the CFO's. And your father, one board member asked cautiously. I turned to him, gray suit, hand gripping the table. Chairman Emeritus, I replied. Honorary title, no voting rights. His face dropped. You're erasing me. I shook my head. No. I'm preserving the parts worth keeping, just without the parts that nearly sank the ship. Logan mumbled, where do you expect me to go? I smiled softly. We've arranged a transition assignment for you, Alaska. One of our less complex expansion projects. You'll be managing ice road logistics. He blinked. There's no Starbucks in Alaska. I didn't flinch. Good. You'll finally learn what work tastes like without caramel drizzle. They used to forget my name. Now they quote me in headlines. 3 weeks later, my name was on every desk in the building, printed on memos, projected in boardrooms, and whispered in hallways. Not out of fear. Out of necessity. I didn't fire anyone. But I did replace the culture of pretending with one of performance. We audited every ongoing contract. We restructured shipping zones. We renegotiated every vendor agreement Nova had previously sabotaged, now on our terms. Then came the numbers. Black small square on-time delivery, 42%. Black small square client satisfaction, 71%. Black small square profit margin Q over Q, 85%. The finance team started smiling again. One even said, we didn't know it could feel like this stable. Then came the press. Fallen giant saved by forgotten daughter. Nova Hargrove, the most unlikely comeback of the year. Mia Clarke, how a note-taker took over the room. Industry leaders, who once shook hands with Logan, now emailed me directly. Investors, some who voted me out years ago, requested meetings to explore deeper collaboration. I didn't reject them, I invited them into my office. The one on the top floor, the one that used to be my father's. Except now, the view didn't intimidate me. It reminded me, power built in silence doesn't echo. It reshapes the room until silence is all that's left. He called me a child, now he calls me ma'am. It was almost 7 p.m. Most of the building had gone home. I was reviewing international expansion proposals when the door opened. No knock, just silence. My father stood there, grayer, slower than I remembered. "You redecorated," he said, eyes sweeping over the clean lines, the framed front-page headlines, the small brass plate on the desk. "Mia Clarke, CEO, Nova Hargrove Logistics." I looked up. "I kept your chair empty. Thought you'd like that." He nodded slowly, then sat in the guest seat. "You did well." "I did what had to be done," I replied. There was a long pause. "I made mistakes," he said, looking not at me, but at the skyline. "I underestimated you. I chose Logan, I thought. Legacy needed a name to carry it." I spoke quietly. "Legacy isn't in the name, it's in the numbers, in the people you empower, in the things that don't fall apart when you stop holding them." He swallowed hard. "You don't need my blessing, but if you ever wanted it." I cut him off gently. "I needed it once, when I was 23, when you told the board I was too emotional. But now, I've got 600 employees who believe in me, a global client base, and a company that was falling apart until a woman you didn't think was qualified put it back together." He looked away. I stood, walked to the wall behind my desk. On it were 3 frames. Black small square, my first failed logistics diagram. Black small square, a sticky note from my assistant that read, "You're the real CEO." Black small square, and an internal memo from 10 years ago. "Recommend Mia for HR, not suited for executive roles." Signed J. Clarke. My father exhaled. "That's cruel." I nodded. "No, that's history. I don't erase what shaped me." He stood to leave. "You've built something better." I looked back out the window. "No, I rebuilt what you abandoned." Then added, without turning, "Good night, Chairman Emeritus." They built a hierarchy. I built a standard. Leadership isn't just about titles, it's about tone, and the tone at Hargrove used to be, "Stay in your lane." I burned that lane map. In the first executive meeting under Nova Hargrove, I brought only one document, a blank sheet of paper. "This," I said, "is our new culture manual. We write it together." Then I laid out 3 rules. Black small square, transparency over tradition. Black small square, collaboration over competition. Black small square, merit over name tags. Some rolled their eyes, some leaned in, but all stayed quiet. Then I did something no previous CEO had ever done. I opened the floor. Logistics managers from overseas spoke. Warehouse coordinators submitted ideas. Junior analysts suggested tools to streamline onboarding, and we implemented them within 2 weeks. Slowly, people stopped whispering in elevators. They started volunteering for pilot projects. The energy shifted. We created a quarterly ritual. Every team votes for a colleague who best embodied the values, not sales performance, not seniority, but integrity, innovation, and respect. The first winner, a deaf coder from our mobile ops team, Logan never noticed her. Now she leads product design for our global logistics app. You see, a broken culture isn't fixed by power. It's healed by people who once felt invisible, finally being seen. That's what Nova Hargrove became, not a second chance, a new standard. You weren't unqualified, you were underestimated. 2 years later, we opened our 6th international hub. A journalist asked me, "What do you want your legacy to be?" I smiled. I don't want statues or wings named after me. I want to build a company where no one ever has to fight for the chair they deserve to sit in. Every policy I write now, every promotion I sign, every intern orientation I walk into. I think about that 23-year-old girl in the corner of the boardroom, holding a notepad while watching her ideas get stolen. I didn't just build Nova Hargrove for her. I built it because of her. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been talked over, passed by, or told to stay in your place, I want you to know, your place doesn't exist yet because you're the one meant to create it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for a title. Don't wait for someone to give you a seat. Build your own table. And when they ask if you're qualified, just smile and show them the empire that bloomed where they left you buried. Have you ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you weren't ready? Share your story below. Someone out there needs to read it today. And if you're building your own empire, don't forget to subscribe. This isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning of yours.